Every person we observe has one moment they never speak of. This is one of those moments.
Welcome to Displaced. I'm your host, Mara Saleh. With me, as always, is neuroscientist Dr. Henrik Voss. Henrik, we're opening an early case file today. Case file 002. The title you've given it is The Longest Day.
It is.
Let's start with the subject. Who was she?
Her name was Yuki, 34 years old, a school teacher. She was gentle, dedicated. From the preliminary observation, it was clear her life revolved around her students.
And her origin point? When and where did you pull her from?
She was at her home, in her study. It was late in the evening. She was sitting at her small wooden desk, grading her students' papers by the light of a single lamp.
That's an incredibly quiet moment to be taken from.
Yes, the displacement occurred directly from her chair. One moment, the scratching of her pencil on paper. The next,
Where did she arrive?
present-day Tokyo, the Shibuya crossing during evening rush hour.
Oh, wow. From total silence to one of the busiest intersections on the planet. The sensory shock must have been immense.
That was our hypothesis, but the observation was different. This displacement was chosen very specifically. Unlike a medieval farmer in New York, for Yuki, the surroundings were both familiar and impossible.
What do you mean?
She could hear her own language being spoken. She could recognize the faces around her as Japanese. She could read some of the characters on the glowing signs. But none of it made sense. The context was shattered. It's one thing to be in a completely alien world. It is another to be in a home that you no longer recognize.
That feels crueler somehow.
Her reaction was not one of panic. She didn't look up at the skyscrapers. She didn't stare at the traffic. She looked at the people. Her expression was searching. It is. The mind seeks patterns, points of reference. When there are none, it can retreat into pure shock, a kind of self-preservation. But when there are echoes of the familiar, the mind tries to reconcile them with the impossible. It's a cognitive dissonance on a scale we can barely measure. It is, in essence, a more profound form of madness.
What was she looking for in that crowd? But does the data tell you anything other than the fact that you placed a good, caring woman in an impossible position at the worst possible moment of her life? It feels less like an experiment and more like a tragedy engineered for an audience of one. You.
Our psionic adjunct, the mind reader, provided an insight that remains one of the most profound in our records. Yuki's mind was not processing her environment. She was filtering it out. Her internal monologue wasn't, "Where am I?" or "What is happening?" It was just a count, a repeated, anxious tally.
A count? She was counting the people?
Not exactly. She was looking for specific people. She was looking for her students. And the core emotional signature was of someone counting and coming up short.
She thought her students were lost in that crowd?
It was a more fundamental, instinctual response. A shepherd checking her flock, and her flock was missing. She would scan the faces, and at one point, she stopped. She saw a young boy, about the right age. He looked at her, confused by her stare. For a moment, there was a flash of recognition in her mind, or rather, hope. But it wasn't him. The count was still wrong.
So this whole incredible, terrifying experience, for her, it was just a search for her kids.
That was the primary drive. It overrode everything else. The entire displacement lasted 11 minutes.
And her return? What happens when she's back at her desk? How does a mind even begin to file that experience away?
She was back in her chair. The lamp was still lit. The sounds of her quiet home returned. She did not move for nearly 3 minutes. Then, she simply placed her hands on the stack of student papers in front of her. The feedback from our instruments was minimal. a slight tremor, a change in heart rate. The most significant data point we recorded was thermal. The papers were still warm.
Still warm from her hands, from before she left.
Yes. The only physical proof she had that the last 11 minutes were real was that nothing had had time to cool. She sat there for a while longer. Then she picked up her pencil and continued grading.
She just went back to work? After seeing the future?
She did. And the next morning she got up and went to school.
Henrik, there's a detail you haven't mentioned. A critical one. Her origin point.
I have not.
You said she was a teacher in Japan. Where exactly?
In the city of Hiroshima.
And the date? What was the exact date of her displacement?
August 5th, 1945.
The day before.
The day before.
So she went to school the next day, on August 6th.
Yes.
And her entire experience of the future was a desperate, panicked search to make sure all her students were accounted for.
That is the data, yes.
Henrik, you knew that when you chose her. You knew the date. You knew what was coming.
The parameters of the experiment are selected to study the human response to temporal shock in its most acute forms. The historical context is a significant variable in that study.
A variable? That's not a variable. That's a punchline to a joke that no one should ever tell. She had no idea what she was really looking at, what she should have been afraid of.
No, she did not.
She came back to her quiet room, worried about grammar and arithmetic for children who had less than a day. She was already carrying all that grief for them. She just didn't have a name for it yet. It was a premonition she couldn't possibly understand.
The term premonition is unscientific, but not inaccurate. Her subconscious was processing a threat it could not name. The mind reader's data showed a recurring image, a flash of intense light, but it was suppressed, dismissed as nonsensical, like a dream fragment upon waking. Her conscious mind refused to acknowledge it.
She was already carrying it, all of it, a weight the universe hadn't officially given her yet, but she felt it. That's what your data shows, that a school teacher in her quiet study somehow felt the coming of the loudest sound in human history.
Felt it, yes, but could not comprehend it. The data is clear on that. It was a formless dread, a signal without a source. The tragedy, from a scientific perspective, is that she was a perfect instrument registering a cataclysm she was not equipped to understand. She had the answer, written in the language of subconscious terror, but had no idea what the question was. All she knew was that her students were not safe.
So she was a perfect instrument, a seismograph for a tragedy she couldn't name. But what is the value of that data, Henrik? What does knowing this change?
It changes our understanding of time's relationship with consciousness. We think of time as a river flowing in one direction. But for Yuki, the future was casting a shadow backward. Her grief wasn't for what had happened, but for what was about to happen. It suggests that on some level, we are all experiencing echoes and reverberations of our own futures. We just lack the language to interpret them.
But that language you're talking about, the one we lack, it's just a clinical word for grief, isn't it? You've discovered that grief can echo backward through time, that you can be mourning something with every cell in your body without a single memory to attach it to. That's a terrible and beautiful and profoundly human thing, Henrik. But it feels less like a discovery and more like an intrusion, like reading a diary you were never meant to see. You looked into this woman's soul at its most vulnerable, and you did it the day before it was extinguished.
An intrusion. Yes, that is one word for it. Another is a bearing of witness. We observed a truth that existed whether we were there to see it or not. The universe wrote that diary, Mara. We just read it.